I want to thank our sponsor, Spring Made, who create amazing watch straps designed as a tool for people who need it. Their proprietary buckle uses friction instead of holes, which securely grips the strap material, allows for infinite adjustments, and assures you will get the perfect fit every time. They have a wide range of colours that all look great on their new Mesa buckle, which includes chamfered keeper rings for an upgraded matching look. Head to their website at springmadeshop.com to check out all their classic, deluxe and rib straps along with all their other quality products. You can also follow them on Instagram at spring_made_shop. Thank you and enjoy. Rich, when did you become interested in aviation?
Ever since I was a kid. My parents are farmers, so I grew up on a farm, and then we don't really have it anymore, but all the low-level jets that used to come over, it's a publicity stunt for the Air Force really for a young guy. So yeah, ever since all the jets used to fly around.
So what year did you actually join the RAF, and can you talk us through some of your flying training you did at this point?
Yeah, so I got a RAF scholarship when I was 16, 17, did my PPL, went to uni, joined the University Air Squadron, and joined the Air Force, in 2002? I think it was about then.
Nice one. So what aircraft were you on? I'm guessing the Hawk was your main primary fast jet trainer.
Yeah, training. No, standard stuff. I was lucky enough to do elementary flying training. I think they've stopped it now. So I did all the basic stuff whilst I was still at university. So then I could join the Air Force, and then went straight to Linton. And you do that for a year. And then it was a time, that was 2004, 5. And pilot numbers oscillate, and that was a time when there was a bit of a chopping kind of phase, so I was lucky enough to get through, and then went to Valley, did 6 months there, and then we went out to Canada. I did then FTC.
Oh, nice.
On the Hawk out there, and that was a great little thing to do out there, so that was a good 4 or 5 months out there, and then back. That was flight training.
Brilliant stuff. So what aircraft did you want to go on to?
The Tornado F3.
Oh, so you got your choice.
Yeah, yeah.
So what were your first thoughts on the F3?
The F3 is the F3. When you fly it from stepping up, going through flying training, you know, each time you step, it's doubling everything. And to be honest, going from the Little Hawk to the F3, it was the same kind of speed. Obviously, you know, when over Mach 2, but general cruising around was normal Hawk kind of stuff, and performance-wise, it was just about like a Hawk. And yeah, so I was a little bit, but when you think about performance, you know, it's the F3. But you know, what it could do, its weaponeering, all that was new to me. So it was a whole world of, you know, radar and tactics and weaponeering. So that was a different sphere as well.
So can you talk us through some of your flying training on the F3?
Yeah, well, you've obviously interviewed some F3 legends like Roy Mack. So you know, anyone who's flown the F3 loves Roy. He is Mr. F3. So probably he's answered a lot more questions, a lot more in depth than I will. But I arrived in 2007, and then we went through the training. It's obviously on 56 Squadron. We did the initial bit down in Coningsby, the ground school down there. It's a very basic sim, and there was a better sim up at Lucas, but that was really where the OCU was. Just the time I got there, they were digging up the runway at Lucas, so we did the first little bit out in Cyprus. So the piloting kind of stuff was really held out there. And then I remember driving up to Kinloss and did a bit up there maybe before the runway was given back to the Air Force and we could actually work at Lucas. But yeah, that was 56. Yeah.
And can you remember your first reheat takeoff? That must have been something special.
They were all reheat takeoffs.
Yes.
in the Tornado. And so I moved into a house in St Andrews with an oil central heating. And I remember distinctly a year's worth of heating in my little cottage was about 500 litres, and that was pretty much what the Tornado took to take off. And I just remember thinking about 30 seconds of taking off. And that would heat my house. So I do recycle my baked bean tins. I'd like to think Greta Thunberg, I'm on her side, but I don't think this is the right game to be an eco warrior.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was your frontline squadron you got posted to?
So from there, I wanted to stay up in Lucas, and there was still 25 going down here at Leeming. And they actually wired me at the, we went to the bar, and then the squadron bosses came in, and they were handing out like Hugos to wear, and they knew I was desperate to stay at Lucas, and they obviously gave me 25 squadron, and I was grumpy, and I was the butt of everyone's joke because everyone knew that wasn't going to be the case, but they absolutely got me hook, line and sinker on that one. So so they sent me to Treble 1, which was just over the road, the south side of the airfield. So that was my first frontline squadron, and my only F3 squadron, because I only had 3 years frontline, and we ran the jet out on Treble 1. So I actually flew the last 3 ship that took off from Lucas, and that was it then. We brought them down to Leeming to be broken up into the RTP program.
Nice.
And there were a few F3s still going around with Kinetic doing missile training trials, but there was 3 of us. I didn't land last. I wanted to, and I was giving it the banter, and then air traffic warned me that there were birds on finals, and number 3 was like, don't go round. So I landed, and then he landed after.
Yeah. So Rich, one of our favourite topics on the channel is DACT. Do you have any good stories there for our viewers on the F3?
Yeah, so DACT, dissimilar air combat. It's always nice to work with our foreign nations, so we're just talking about the F3 really. So at my time there, first couple of trips, I remember very well actually, because baby pilot, there are code words and you just don't know what to say sometimes. So it was a joint warrior exercise. So
nice.
Big Navy, we worked with the Navy, and God bless them, but we're used to different fighter controllers, let's say. The fighter controller that we had, all he wanted to do was know what time we're going to fly past the ship, so his captain could get a fly past, and we were like, no, we've got to do some work here, and he's like, Roger, stand by. The captain wants to know what time you can overfly the ship. So we were in this big exercise, and all our controller wanted to do was wax this ship. I was on the boss's wing, so the squadron boss, and as we climbed up, he had a radar pressurization failure, so it was limited to 10,000 feet.
Right.
So I climbed up to something like 40,000 feet. All of a sudden, got a couple of Rafales on my radar, merged with a Rafale. I think he wanted to fight me. There's no way in a tanked up F3 I was going to fight a Rafale at 40,000 feet. So I just shot him in the face and called him dead. My boss was below me, and I could see him on data link below at 10,000. So I just put this F3 on its back, absolutely 90 degrees down, and I was just slewing where I could the weapon system to get the Rafale. And my comm was, I know what it should have been, more professional, but I was like, don't worry, boss, I'm coming. And then shot this other Rafale, pulled up. And I think that was like one of my first trips on the F3 with Treble 1.
Wow,
so
that's amazing.
Come back and remember things like that, but probably for all the wrong reasons, but it was a good little trip.
Absolutely. And do you have any memorable stories from your time on the F3? You did mention something with Roy McIntyre, who's the king of the F3, isn't he?
Yeah, Roy Mac's great. Like, just as You know, the F3 had its fatigue life at 4,500 hours, and then it was dead, and Roy Mack's walking around with a 4,500 hour patch, so you're just like, this guy owns an F3 Absolutely. In total, like he's an absolute legend. But you know, you meet people, you get people, and you think, I want to emulate that. So that was Roy Mack. So we were doing this 2v1 air combat, and how that works, you're the wingman, that's the leader, and you always avoid the leader. But a tactical situation might come up where you want to turn the other way. So there's some words you say, engaged and press, and then you switch lead, so he avoids you. And I forget whether I was leading or he was leading, but I remember I was the engaged fighter and he should have been avoiding me, and I just saw Roy just pitch up, flick it round beautifully, bottom rudder in, and he dusted me off. And for safety reasons, we've got to have 1,000 foot, we call it a bubble, safety bubble around you. But that was probably the closest I've seen an F3. I mean, Roy in his cool way just glanced up at me and gave me a salute. But I could probably see what was written on his knee pads, and I called a terminate of the fight for safety reasons. I was like, that was close, terminate. And my nav in the back, and navs with air combat, you know, it's a funny game for them. And he's like, are you calling out Roy Mack? And I was like, oh no, you know, I'm calling out Roy. And you know, the sort of, you got quiet then, and the nav was like, you're in a bit of a sticky place here, calling out the legend. And you know, testament to the man, you know, in the debrief, he just put his hand up straight away and was like, totally my bad. And you take that away for you for the rest of your career. You know, always be the guy that puts your hand up, admits their mistakes. Absolutely. You know, makes you a better pilot at the end of it. You know, there are other pilots who never admit their mistakes, and you know, they get found out. But,
yeah, I've heard that before.
Roy Mack's a good guy, you know.
Absolutely. So overall, did you enjoy your time in the F3, and how many hours did you get on the type?
Yeah, 500 hours. The F3 was dying, you know, it was great to be there and be part of it. You know, the F3 flying was like the F3, you know, and I'm sure your other interviews will go into more detail, but for me, the engines didn't meet the airframe. You know, the engines, obviously, you know, the design spec of them was to go as fast as possible, and there was a bit of a bypass ratio, but it was pretty much a pure jet engine-ish, you know, and it's like being in a car and only having one gear, and that gear was 6th gear, you know, like on the straight, if you were to race it at Silverstone, it would go, and the corners, not so much, you know, it was sluggish. And the problem was, we'd dogfight at about, with wings forward, about 330 knots, 350 knots, and the engines only really came alive about 500 knots, you know, 450 to 500 knots, and then you'd feel some response on the engines. So you'd be there dogfighting, and the engines would just feel like going through treacle. So it was a little bit like that. Obviously, at the end, we were limited with fatigue, so you know, we just wanted to manage the aircraft doing QRA rolls, so that it would last all the way to the end, and we'd still have the airframes in a sensible kind of place to deliver that vital QRA roll that it did right to the end.
But yeah, Rich, can you talk us through your transition to the GR4? I've never had this on the channel before. Is that unusual, or was it quite common at the end of the F3's life?
No, so the end of the F3, now with history, we can look back, there was SDR 2010, so the Harrier had been disbanded, and that was a bit of a surprise to the Air Force to get rid of the Harrier. So that happened 6 months, maybe 9 months before. So all those pilots now were flushed out into the system. The Typhoon was building up at the time, but very slowly taking on numbers. So everyone wanted to go Typhoon, you know, and I was there, front and center to go Typhoon. But all these guys were going. But my wife comes from Lossiemouth, just weirdly, a little village just outside Lossie where the GR4 is based, or it was based. So I had a meeting with the poster, and I remember it very well. So in one office, he came to the squadron, So went into one office, had a chat with him. He's like, "Hey Parge, where do you want to go?" I was like, "Typhoon, obviously, but my wife comes from Lossiemouth, so you know, just saying that's on the cards maybe." And he said, "I promise I'll do my very best for you, and I'll really work hard for you and see what I can do." And I left, made myself a cup of tea in the tea bar, went to like our offices at the back, so literally 2 doors down, and already I had an email saying, "Congratulations, you've been posted to Lossiemouth." So I don't know how much work he did, but
yeah,
you know, it was perfect.
Yeah.
You know, his family, lifestyle have always come first with me, you know, like, and it's just worked out perfectly.
So what was the transition like going from air to ground? Did you find that quite easy, or was it a bit of a struggle for you, or?
So the actual transition, I did the short course on 15, was it? 15, and that was designed for, let's say, a JAG mate or a Harrier mate to come to the GR4.
Right.
So I remember I did 6 trips of how to fly the Tornado, and guess what? They fly exactly the same. And then I went to the range once, and we spaffed off all the bombs at all the different parameters, like I knew what I was doing. So I was saying, can I not have these, you know, how to fly a Tornado sorties, and can I go the range and stuff? But they was set, and that's what it is. What it was like culturally, it was from the Tornado F3, it was like going back 20 years, and I wish at the very start someone had just said, what we do, or what we try and do tactically, is just to keep your hand in and keep you busy, but concentrate on close air support, because obviously it had been doing close air support for the last 20 odd years of its life, you know, and that was it, you know, whether it was going to smash down and rage around low level like we trained, you know, that war never really came. But you know, sometimes you're thinking, what are we doing, smashing around low level, using 1,000-pound retard weapons, which is what we did, and the Air Force didn't even have any 1,000-pound retard weapons, and we were still, you know, going down like it was Vietnam in the 60s, and we're like, I don't know about this tactically, but that's what it was. So yeah, I really wish someone had said, don't worry about it, concentrate on close air support, have some fun smashing out some bridges in the west coast of Scotland.
Yeah. So you said it flew exactly the same, did it? Because I'm guessing the GR4, you always flew with tanks and outer pylons on, didn't you?
Yeah.
Did that affect it?
But the jugged up F3, what we called Lima fit, you know, the big jugs, you know, would be heavy, draggy. You know, it's a Tornado.
And what was the cockpit environment like coming from the F3? Did you find that was it very similar?
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah.
You could jump one to the other without any problems.
Really?
The TV tab, we called it, the pilot TV tab, in the F3 wasn't colour, but gave you everything you needed. Did we call it MMFD? You know, it had different functions, but you know, it was nice. It was colour. It was maybe a bit bigger, but that was like the hardware, and pretty much everything else was similar enough. Obviously, you had a lot more autopilot modes, up your combing with the GR4 and the TFR as well. So one of my memorable stories on the GR4. We'd just come back from Herrick doing our Afghanistan tour, and one of the squadrons was meant to go out to the UAE to do an exercise, but they went to Africa. Remember that mission out there where the Boko Haram or whatever? Anyway, so this exercise had to be manned, so they pulled us off our post deployment leave and shipped us out to UAE. And we were on an airbase just outside Dubai, and we had the traditional preemptive bollocking from the wing commander who was based there, telling us that Dubai is actually a war zone, and we could hear like the music in the background, you know, the party lights. Like, we've just come from Afghanistan like 2 weeks ago. Like, not that that's, you know, the full war zone, but you know, it was interesting. Anyway, the exercise there, one of the missions that I had was a 2v2 merge with F-22. So I was in a GR4. Me and my wingman, 22 came in. The GR4's radar obviously wasn't going to hack it, so completely ghosted us. The wingman just went vertical, and we just had a bit of a turning fight with the F-22, and now that thing turns like I've not seen anything turn like it. Within, it flew into our bracket. I mean, we didn't even know we were bracketing this thing. The F-22 came in the middle. We're like, oh my God, we've bracketed, and that's a perfect place when you're a fighter pilot to bracket, because then you can cross it. Anyway, within maybe 90 degrees, he's on my 6. And I'm doing what I can in a GR, which isn't much. But I looked over my shoulder, and how you fight, you look over your shoulder and you check your parameters of your speed, your height, you know, what you're doing. I'm trying to check where my wingman is as well. You know, you have a scan like that. And as I look back, and my cadence was about that, you know, keep looking back. He had gone from completely saddled, taking it nice and easy, really breezy position, and he had completely flat plated like that. And I initially thought that it was a different aircraft, because how have you got to that? And all he did was a rudder turn, shot my wingman, and then just ruddered into me. And his actual movement hadn't changed. He was still exactly in the same place. He just ruddered about 90 degrees and back. I was thinking, yeah, GR4's not going to cut it. Yeah. So as we left, we took some photos, you know, just for, hey, you know, nice little photos to have. And I remember saying on the radio, could I just take a picture of you through my gun sight, you know, just for a comedy kind of, yeah, it's a GR4 gunning an F-22, as if that's not going to happen. And it was about a month or two after the F-22 had famously lost to a Rafale, and there's mitigation about that. Yes. But obviously the F-22 world, that went down like an absolute lead balloon. And the thought of the F-22 turning up in a gun sight of a GR4 was just not on the cards. He lit his burners and just went vertical and was like, no way. That was the end of the F-22. He just buggered off, God knows where he went, and then we came home.
So Rich, what did you do after your time on the GR4?
Well, the GR4 was dying as well, or certainly at Lossy. It moved and carried on, you know, doing its thing, and actually stepped up and did Syria, and the guys down at Marham did an absolutely fantastic job. So the GR4 had a final flourish, and the guys did it. You know, hats off to them, and I was absolutely delighted actually at the Diamond 9 ship leaving due. I was in a Hawk doing the photography for it, so some photos of me picture bombing in the background with a little Hawk. I'm saying Hawk. I went to 100 squadrons, so for me, I was thinking it's either time to go in the Air Force or stay. And I decided to do my exams to become an airline pilot. And then I was about to leave at the end of the GR, and then I thought I'd have one more roll of the dice, and joined 100 Squadron, which was absolutely fantastic, and I'm so glad I did it. I arrived, and it was like a breath of fresh air. The boss and the leadership was just outstanding, and absolutely reinvigorated myself into the Air Force. And yeah, sometimes I miss it, you know, and it was just a fantastic squadron. 100, you know, it had a nickname, and we hated it from the 90s, the Tatty Ton.
Oh, the Tatty Ton.
But
yes.
We were really, you know, we'd like to think of ourselves really professional. You know, we were only in a Hawk, which was like, that was the negative thing about the job that you had to say. But we'd go out and we'd do targeting for the Typhoon as a normal sort of day job. So dare I say it, it's a lot more cheaper for a Typhoon to have a bit of metal in the sky to pick up on the radar, to target and shoot as a Hawk than another Typhoon.
Yes.
But it comes with limitations of speed, you know, so the Hawk was still 9G, but, you know, it couldn't present a target at doing 1.5 Mach, you know, that's the negative. But the costing of it, and I was talking to a Air Commodore a couple of weeks ago, and he said actually the Hawk was something like £600 an hour to fly.
Wow.
So, you know, the costing was immense of what we did, but we do that as a day job. Loads of air combat. I mean, air combat at the yin yang, because we used to train each other to get up and get out there. Helo fill was amazing as well, do all that, and then close air support. And actually I quite enjoyed the close air support on the Little Hawk, because you could have more interaction with the JTAC. So on the Tornado, you would get you call it a 9 line. So each line has a specific thing in it. So let's say line 4 thinks the coordinates. Probably got that wrong, but you know, you have to put that in, you know, line 5, the elevation, stuff like that, and you go through all the entire thing. And on the GR4 you'd receive your 9 line, and then you just plug it in to your weapon system, load it into the bomb, make sure that bomb's good and fully loaded, and make sure your delivery is in parameters, because you know, people could play your tapes and you're making sure you're all that. In the Hawk you've got none of that, so where you spend your time is, instead of just receiving it and putting it into the kit, you receive it and then you can have a bit more of a discussion going, you sure you've got the right weapons target matching here? What about the line of attack, the LOA? Or you know, what about a different you know, 1 bomb or 2, you know, and you could just increase the knowledge of the JTAC like that. So that was a job. I remember a sortie down in sorry, this is just close air support, so probably really dull.
No.
But this guy was just from 22 SAS, was just about to deploy. He was like on the phone like, "Sir, I'm fully qualified, I just want some contested airspace, CAS." So I flew down to Hereford, and I think I checked in my Little Hawk as like a 4-ship of F-15s, you know, with Texas accents, and then they committed and went against some flankers that were attacking from the south, you know.
Wow.
And then one of them got shot down, so all the time he's trying to read me these coordinates to bomb, I'm like, shut up, you know, like, and then I got him organising the stack to do a helicopter emergency evac of the down pilot, so all of a sudden he's writing stuff like that. And then I was running out of fuel, and then I finally said, yeah, you know, I'll drop a bomb for you, and I was now like a 4-ship of Harrier or something, and I came in and it was like a loft attack, and I just lofted up out of fuel, nowhere to go, and then he was like, stop. I was like, oh my god, you know, why do you want me to stop? He's like, sir, I can only see one of you. And I'm like, oh my god, for the last hour it's only been me, you know, on the radio with all these voices. He's like, can you go again? I was like, no, I've got to go for a cup of tea. Like, I am done.
You're done.
Yeah, things like that you remember.
Absolutely. And did you only work with the RAF, or would you work with all the NATO?
Yeah. So we were one group, so how the groups are set up in the Air Force, so we were on 100. We were the same groups as the Typhoon, GR4 and F-35, so these requests would come in for a one group asset to go somewhere and support something. And obviously the GR4s were just so busy, you know, at the end they were just working so hard. The Typhoon was still in growth and also, you know, out in theatre and doing their bigger exercises, let's say, that are bought and paid for, take a load of engineering support, let's say your red flags. And yeah, and we'd get the little ones, you know, out and about, which was hilarious. You know, the Typhoons would rock up with 2 aircraft, half the squadron of engineers, and like bucket loads of spares just arriving constantly. We'd arrive in a Hawk. The engineers would bring one lorry and it would be the steps. You can't see any now, but the big like safety steps so you don't fall over. But like maybe a couple of wheels, that would be about it. Then we'd do like every sortie going for like 2 weeks and then fly home. And,
wow.
Yeah, it was such a good little aircraft. But.
Absolutely. Did you fly every day on 100 Squadron?
Yeah.
Wow.
Generally twice, so it's a two event day. Yeah, it was good.
It's a busy
It's
time.
busy. Yeah. So you asked me about my hours on F3, so I got 500 GR as well, and 2000, something like that on the Hawk.
Wow.
So it was good.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was good.
Rich, do you have any DACT stories from your time on the Hawk?
Yeah, we did a load all around Europe, so I fought quite a lot in the Little Hawk. We did quite a lot in Eastern Europe with Hungary and the Czech Republic, and that's where I first saw one of these aircraft. They call it the ALCA, Advanced Light Combat Aircraft. So I did a bit of DACT. The Czechs wanted some 2v2 DACT with the Gripens, and that's a great little jet to fly, and that's really interesting because obviously it's fly-by-wire. So with the tanks, it's limited on its G, and obviously if it ever got into dogfight, it would jettison the tanks. But with the Hawk, you merge, you don't have tanks, and you can give it a good fight. And first time you fight a Gripen, you think, yeah, I'm winning, I'm getting this. And instead of taking that, snapshot, commit everything you've got to taking those angles for that one chance of the fight, you sort of refine your BFM to more lag kind of position, so you just cash in those angles more slowly to get into that ideal killing point round the back, the control zone. And you're just you go, yeah, I'm winning, I can work to his control zone and do some control zone BFM. And then just as every time we're against Gripen, you're just getting into that control zone after not shooting him when you had an opportunity, and then his tank's empty, and then he's full up again, and then all of a sudden he just comes up at you, and you're like, I wish I'd have taken those shots every time.
Yeah. Which was more difficult to fight in the Hawk, the Typhoon or the Gripen?
The Typhoon is a bit of a beast. I think with the Hawk, it's still manoeuvrable, but we did a load of BFM and ACT. So ACT is 2v1 or 2v2. So 1v1, all the Typhoon had to do was put its lift vector on and pull, and there was zero thought. When it became more elemental, so either a 1v2 or a 2v1, so there's another aircraft to think about in the mix, that's when, dare I say it, we had an advantage, because we wouldn't be so brutal with the G. We could just take that look around, get the full picture visually of what's going on, and we did quite a lot of it as well, so you'd just feel what was going on as well, and you'd have more SA, and you'd try and break down the Typhoon's SA, which with its brutal G onset, you just knew the pilot was just straining against his neck, and then hopefully give him more and more problems.
So overall, do you enjoy your time on 100 Squadron flying the Hawk?
Yeah, best job ever. Yeah, it was good. But the people who make it, it was just a really, really good bunch. Brilliant pilots, I arrived and the boss was just superb, just one of those guys that you'd follow anywhere. And there was like 3-4 bosses in my time, because I actually hung around like a bad smell. I actually did 5 years, because I was meant to do 4, and that was me leaving the Air Force. Then I was having so much fun, I gave them another year for free. So I did 5, and I think I did 3 or 4 bosses, and each one of them was brilliant, and it's the boss that makes the squadron, and it was good.